am here with Jasmine for the Living Archives project. Jasmine, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Jasmine, let's just kick it off. First thing, where's home for you right now?
Home is here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was actually born and raised.
So Jasmine, how long have you been in the Charlotte area?
31 years. I'll actually be 32
Wow.
in February, so
your entire life, literally.
yeah.
Okay, so Jasmine, I want you to think about the pandemic experience over the last 2+ years, and here we're in the wind down of it. But what was your experience during those years of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, so it was like a roller coaster because initially I was like, oh, this is something that's just going to come and pass. And so after a while, realizing it's here to stay and figuring out, through all the panic, trying to make sure you have a lot of supplies, dealing with, the transition from your kids being in school to not being in school. So it was a lot. I would describe it as a roller coaster. And here now I feel like, we've adjusted to this is our new normal, whereas back then the thought process was, I just want to get back to normal. I can't wait till it gets back to normal. And now we've learned and adjusted to the fact that this is normal. We'll never go back to that time.
Yeah. Thinking about those early days where your initial thought was, this will pass. What do you remember of those early days? And when they said, okay, we're locking down, we're going into quarantine?
Yeah, I remember I was out at an outreach program, and I believe we had, when I came back, there was a mini meeting happening in the office, and I was like, what is going on? And it was basically to say that after we left that day, we weren't going to be coming back. And that was the reality that, this is serious. But I still was like, this will just be a couple of weeks, And so we were getting emails, and it was just a panic at that time because it was like a very unknown situation of how long are you going to be out of work? Are you going to have a job? How long are the kids going to be out of school? Because that same day when I went home is when, the kids' school sent a message to say they weren't going to be in school. So that was kind of the reality that this is a lot more serious than what you have anticipated it being. And that's when the panic shopping begins.
Hitting all that news hitting at once, did you feel that flood of stress, that flood of pressure?
No, I think the overwhelming feeling came when I became a homeschool parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. That becomes a full-time job.
Yeah.
So in the wake of the lockdown and distancing, how have your friendships or family relationships changed during the pandemic and into now?
Yeah, I would say that they've stayed consistent. I would say back then it was very difficult because I'm in a tight-knit family. We go have Sunday dinner every week at my mom's house. So like the first couple of weeks, it was like, should we do Sunday dinner? And we did for the first couple of weeks, but then after a while, the numbers are going up. It was like, how are we going to maintain the family unit that we created? We play spades every week. And so I was like, well, why don't we try to do something like when we do spades on FaceTime or Zoom? And they were like, no, we can't do that. So that was kind of the shift in how are we going to maintain. And as we started seeing like this pandemic is not going anywhere, how are we going to maintain what we built, this tradition of having weekly dinner? And I think we only skipped a couple of weeks and then we went back to...
So you kept the routine, you kept the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever try a virtual anything with your family?
No, we didn't. I actually was trying to plan a virtual friending, like a ladies' night, but I never did it.
So no virtual spades, no virtual friending?
No.
Jasmine, describing the public reaction to it and the 6 feet apart and the masks. What was your experience going out in public, like at the very height of the pandemic?
Yeah, it was overwhelming because before the masks were readily available, when people were wearing all kind of stuff like grocery bags and diapers and okay, so that was very overwhelming because I was like, is it that serious? Like I knew it was serious, but I'm a person that doesn't panic easily. So all of that was causing stress, and it was causing me to be overwhelmed. And then when the masks, finally were readily available and we were getting free masks and all of that, stores were having masks for you to have. There were gloves, there were everything. It was so overwhelming to me because the mask makes me feel restricted. I can't breathe. I have asthma, so I didn't like it. So having to go into places, I understood the why, and I understood it was to protect us, but it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Just hearing kind of that thought around the extreme protections, that was probably more shocking than seeing like the medical things in place, like the medical masks, but the face shields and the homemade masks.
Yeah.
Jasmine, has the pandemic changed your normal routines? Even as we're in the wind down, how have those changed?
Yeah. So prior to the pandemic, I've been and always, I still am, I would say, a very systematic person. So I've had my routine of I leave work, I go to the car line or whatever. We come home, we do homework, we do all of those things. So with the pandemic, after a while, it was just this slow. And I was just like, I almost went into like a depression of feeling like, oh my gosh, I have nothing to do. There's nothing going on. There's nowhere to go because everything is closed. And I'm a homebody, but being forced to be home was hard. And so I feel like what the pandemic has taught me, as well as a lot of other people, is that you don't have to rush to get to the next moment, or you don't have to rush to check off that next task, but slow down and live in the moment and allow life to be life. And so I feel like that's a positive thing that has come from it, because it's allowed me to slow down and not feel like every moment has to be filled with something, but just to be.
I love that. I think it definitely taught us all to slow down a little more. But when you're a task-oriented person, I feel like that was an especially hard thing to do. And you mentioned being a homeschool parent. What were some of the other challenges that you faced during the pandemic?
I would say the homeschool parent was the absolute hardest.
Yes, speaking also from experience.
Yes, because I had my son and then I had my nephew. And they're two different grades, so their schedules were different. And it's trying to help this one with homework, and then it's like next thing you know, oh, I'm out for a break, I'm hungry. It was very stressful. Resources as well, like hopping from store to store, trying to find Lysol just for regular at-home use, not even, out of panic, but nothing's available because everybody has panicked. The prices of everything skyrocketing, even now, we still see that. I would say those are the main challenges.
Yeah, the homeschooling parent, keeping them on task, sticking to their schedules, dealing with meltdowns over work. I know that as a parent was one of the hardest things that we faced as well. So Jasmine, what are some long-lasting consequences for you of the pandemic?
For me, I would say I'm blessed to not have those. Not directly, but we did lose a couple of church members as a result of, the pandemic. And I would say for me, maybe the financial change, because everything has gone up. I feel like the influx of everything is due to the effects of the pandemic. Yep. So I would say that.
Yeah, for sure. So you're fortunate and blessed enough to have a position that allows you work flexibility. And even so, that had some challenges. Can you tell me about those, the work challenges that you faced during the pandemic?
Yeah, so I work for the library in outreach where my primary job is to bring programs out to schools. Well, the schools weren't there. And so trying to figure out how to still serve our families, how to still be present and relevant to the children that I see was very difficult. Doing virtual programs where they were burned out. And they didn't really want to log on because they were over Zoom. Like in the beginning, you saw it was fun for them because they were happy they got to sleep in and they get to use their computers a little bit more. And quickly it became very stressful for them. And making the decision to say, this isn't working, this isn't what they need, let's pivot, let's figure it out. It was constant change happening because it's like, okay, now we're here, or they're going to a hybrid schedule. Oh, no, they're back at home, or they're down there, they're here all the time, but now the library staff, we can't go out. So it was a lot, and not being able to directly connect with my students was very difficult. And I remember in March when we finally were able to go back into piloting in-person outreach programs, I was like, this is what I've been missing. So that I would say was the challenge, as well as like not knowing. It was a fear of the unknown. How long are we going to be working from home? How long are we going to have this set up?
Will it get worse?
Yeah. Are they going to start doing layoffs? That stress of it all, I think, was the unknown because we were in uncharted territory. We had never dealt with this before.
For sure. We were literally building the plane in the air as we were going through.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about challenges, but I want you to focus on some of the good things that you've learned through your experience of the pandemic. And I know you said to slow down, and I hope that that's a lesson that a lot of people learned. But was there anything else, or was slowing down and pacing yourself one of the biggest takeaways?
Yeah, there were a lot of ups for me because I was in school. I had just started school at the beginning of the pandemic. I just started my master's program, which was very fearful for me because I hadn't been in school in 5 years. And so I had just gotten accepted, was about to start, had my schedule, and then the pandemic happened. And so having the flexibility of just consistently being home at this point, like you're not driving anywhere, you're not having to rush to pick up from school, like you're in the house all day. So, it gave me the opportunity to be able to get extra things done. And then it just opened my mind to other things that I had mentally put on hold because life is so busy and life is so crazy. So once I finished my master's program, I went and got my nail tech license. So I went to school for that, and that was an evening program. At that time, I think things had opened back up, but it allowed me to see life from a different lens. Like you don't have to have this life that you created right now, because it could change within the snap of a finger.
Yeah, it sounds like you kind of, after that initial shock of, oh, I've lost my structure, I've lost my routine, you just pivoted and made it just this whole different experience for yourself.
For sure.
Okay, so Jasmine, how has this experience shaped you as a person now?
Yeah, that's a good one. Spiritually, it has allowed me to tap in on that end. It has given me more time to prioritize my foundation and prioritize strengthening that foundation so that way when life happens, because it does, as this pandemic happened, it doesn't shake me. Like I remember seeing a bunch of panic and although it was scary because I'm not invincible of that, it was never a panic. Mm-hmm. And I had to be thankful for where I am, spiritually, because I was just like, wow, like is something wrong with me because I'm not reacting like that? But then I just had to remind myself, whose you are. So I feel like it just helped me gain perspective in different areas, whereas I never had the time or sat back to really think about perspective. It was like just throwing a big screen in my face to say, this is where you are, this is who you are, this is what you're seeing, but
it was kind of a focusing lens. It kind of highlighted, your place. And so what do you think your future will look like, taking all of this experience and everything you've learned?
Yeah, I'm gonna just keep rolling with the punches, whereas before everything had to be lined out. Everything had to happen the way that my plan was, right? It's like, by this age, I'm gonna have this. By this age, I'm gonna be doing this. I need to be doing this. It's just now I'm at the point where it's like, just roll with the punches and, go where life takes you, and just maintain along the way.
Thinking about all of the personal experiences you went through, being a homeschool parent, the initial shock of the pandemic and what it means for you, and then adjusting your life according to it. What did these personal experiences show you about yourself? What did you learn about yourself?
That I am flexible. Like I can actually, be flexible. Whereas before I would say, no, it has to be this way. But it's shown me that I'm a lot further than where I thought I was. That I'm a lot stronger than what I thought I was. And that I'm a lot more blessed than what I give myself credit for.
Mm-hmm. It almost highlighted those blessings and attributes in you. Jasmine, thank you so much for sharing your personal experience. It was definitely a life-changing one for us all, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your stories with us today.
Thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Thank you.